So, if you haven't seen my Splatoon 4 bingo card yet, one of my predictions is main power-up, and that got me thinking. If main power-up were to be implemented in Splatoon 4, what would I want to see for it? So today, I figure I'd go through all the Splatoon 3 weapons we have and give my thoughts on what their MPU effect should be, with the overall goal being to hopefully reduce broken effects and, with one small exception, completely take out damage up. So I'm gonna go through my list and compare them with Splatoon 2 where it's applicable, and let me know what you think and what effects you'd like to see in the comments below. Real quick, if you didn't play Splatoon 2, main power-up is just a stackable ability that increases some qualities of a main weapon. So let's start with the shooters. In Splatoon 2, the effects here range from increasing damage, increasing shot accuracy, increasing range, and increasing bullet velocity. Now, a lot of these are off the table. Again, we're trying not to do damage up, and intensify action helps with air RNG, meaning there's very little room for ground RNG, especially when it's already been buffed for other weapons in this class. So I'm gonna put shooters into 3 categories. The spray shooters, Sploosh, Junior, Arrow, and Normal, can get grounded RNG increases, up to 30%, allowing them to be more accurate versions, which would be significant boost to the fighting power, though slightly decreasing the painting power of all of these weapons. I think that'd be an interesting tweak for them. For our semi-automatic weapons of L3, H3, and Squeezer, I want to go with an MPU option that's similar to some buffs we've been seeing recently, which is increasing the shot velocity and range by about 3%. This is going to be the first of many MPU effects that will stack better in smaller quantities, because the effect is smaller. And yeah, ideally, I don't want weapons to have to run a whole ton of MPU like they did in Splatoon 2 for some effects. The idea here is pretty simple. L3 and H3 are a bit undertuned, and Squeezer has gotten a range and velocity nerf larger than this buff will provide. This allows them to offset their weaknesses a bit and helps them to catch up with other main weapons in power. As for all the other shooters, I decided to go with a relatively simple effect, which is reducing the damage drop-off by up to 50%, basically making it so that fall-off is more likely to kill in fewer hits, which can increase the effective range these weapons can fight at, but is relatively small in terms of buffs. With our largest category out of the way, let's jump to the rollers, all of which had damage up, and so of course we're going to change that. There's going to be 2 categories here. For Carbon, Roller, and Big Swig, we're once again going to be focusing on a damage drop-off, this time by up to 25%. Now, this might seem like less than the shooters on paper, but keep in mind, increasing the range at which 2 horizontal or vertical flicks will kill is much more important for rollers, especially Big Swig, and it'll help a lot with their consistency considering they're already pretty good fighters. As for Dynamo and Flings a Roller, I instead want to focus on the paint of the horizontal flick being increased by up to 10%, one that again would stack better in lower quantities. This would help with general movement capabilities for Flings a Roller, and Dynamo Roller would help with actually getting its specials like it's supposed to, while having less overlap than a direct paint buff would. Next up is Chargers. For Gootuber, Bamboo, and Pencil, I want to increase the charge speed in the air by up to 50%, which for Bamboo would mean that it matches Squiffer in having an unchanged charge speed at its max effect, which I think would be very interesting. I'm going to have my 1 damage up exception apply to Squiffer, Charger, and E-Leader. This will be slightly different than the other MPU effects, but I still think it's interesting. MPU on these weapons will increase the percentage of charge that can one-shot, up to 90% of a charge qualifying for a one-tap. However, it will subsequently decrease the range of a partial charge by that same amount, so up to 10%. This is very heavily based on the damage up effect in Splatoon 1, but obviously this function's a little bit different. This isn't about 99.9ing, this is about increasing more aggressive and active charger play with a downside of a range decrease for its partials if you're not taking advantage of it. I think this would overall have a more healthy impact on the game, though the effect could of course be something smaller if you want to avoid this problem entirely. In general, the buffs tended to be range increases, which ended up being much more unhealthy for these weapons and would be even more so in Splatoon 3 where they have less checks against them. Next up is Sloshers. For Slosher and Tri-Slosher, we're once again going to be reducing the drop-off damage by up to 50%. This isn't as important for Slosher since its minimum is 50, but it can still help it work with other weapons more consistently. Dreadringer, though, has so little damage drop-off that this buff would essentially be pointless for it, so instead we'll give it a damage range increase of up to 3% that stacks well in lower quantities, helping with its fighting capabilities a little bit. Our last category is Blob, Machine, and Explosher. All of these have slower shot speed, so this will be a shot velocity, but not range increase of up to 30%, helping with a lot of them in slightly different ways for more consistent damage on opponents. As for Splatterlings, Edit, Nautilus, Hydra, and Ballpoint can have their charge time decreased by up to 5%, again stacking better in lower quantities, since all of these are longer charge time weapons that would benefit from having lower cooldowns. Mini on Heavy, on the other hand, which already have relatively fast charge times, can instead be their firing duration increased up to 15%. For most of the Splatterlings back in Splatoon 2, this was just increasing their firing duration, usually by a larger amount. So it's definitely toning back their effects a little bit because they did seem kind of strong, but making it a little bit easier to run in smaller amounts as to not interfere with the run speed they use. Blasters will be our first class to all have the same effect. In Splatoon 2, this was pretty much exclusively either a blast radius size or increasing accuracy when jumping, neither of which would really work for this game. So instead, this is going to increase the paint on the blast radius by up to 15%. If you paid attention to Splatoon's balance changes, you might have seen Range Blaster go through this back and forth. And the idea is pretty simple. More paint under the explosion makes it more likely to trap the opponent and go for a follow-up hit, which I think would be helpful for pretty much all of them. Brushes are up next. I will change Ink Brush's effect because its run speed is already boosted to be around the level of MPU anyway in Splatoon 2, so instead it'll get a range increase of up to 5%, stacking better in lower quantities, which could be very helpful given that weakness. Octobrush and Paintbrush, though, can get the same roll speed up as usual, being increased by about 7% and again, stacking better on lower quantities, since it makes more sense to try to catch these up with Ink Brush. Dualies are up next on our list and are another one that had pretty much exclusively damage up, so this will be changed to infect the dodge roll distance, increasing it by 3% but stacking well in lower quantities. The exception here will be Dowser Dualies, which will get up to a 5% increase for a pretty simple reason. It only has one dodge roll. Next up is Brellas. The MPU effects for Brella and Undercover were regeneration of the canopy, something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it already got those as buffs in this game. Instead, this will just be a flat-out shield increase like it is with Tenebrella. However, Tenebrella got it way too large last time, so instead this will scale based on the weapon. Recyclebrella will be up to 50%, going from 100 to 150 shield. Undercover will be 25%, going from 200 to 250. Normal Brella will be 20%, going from 500 to 600. And Tent will be 7%, going from about 700 to 750. With all of these stacking well in lower quantities. Pretty obvious here, there's a lot more things that tread Brella Shield, so I feel like a net increase is relatively fair here, and it scales based on the power level of each of the Brellas right now and how helpful that effect would be. Obviously, the more HP you have, the less of a percent increase you should get. From here, we move on to Splatoon 3's weapons, which don't have an MPU effect originally, of course. Tri-Stringer and Wellstring are both candidates to get radius size increases on their explosions, since they're honestly quite small for each individual one, so we'll go with up to 10% here. Reflux, on the other hand, without explosions, is a good candidate for the range and velocity increase by about 3%, though I'll specify this one applies to both firing modes, meaning even its tap shots will have slightly more range, and this will be one that stacks better in lower quantities. I think that would help a lot with the weapon's consistency. As for Splatanas, we kind of have to err on the side of caution here and not doing too much. I tried to make the effects at least somewhat cool. For Wiper and Stamper, that could be a dash/slash range of about 3%, stacking well in lower quantities, just to help it a little bit with its kill range, while clearly being as minimal as possible. Decapitator, on the other hand, absolutely does not need more dash/slash range, so instead we'll go with the velocity of the charge slash, because it is pretty slow, being up to 25% faster. And that's it. Is it definitely harder to make effects while trying to be more careful about making them overtuned and removing damage up, or the lack of being able to use effects taken up by Intensify Action? Absolutely. Is it still possible to put in the game and would be a nice way to subtly buff a lot of weapons and add more ways of balancing it? Absolutely. I've said for a long time that I think MPU could be done right, and in my opinion, these effects would all qualify for that. Maybe with some testing for the Chargers one that I talked about earlier. And I do hope we see a better version of it in Splatoon 4 that can redeem the ability's poor reputation. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what effects you want for main power-up in Splatoon 4 in the comments below, and I will see you all next time.